In what way does a TV show or movie show a procedure from your profession that make you roll eyes at how stupidly it's misrepresented? When someone is using a sewing machine and they just run a single layer of fabric through the machine. What asterisk exactly are you sewing, Linda? You've just put a line of stitches on a perfectly good scrap of fabric, and in the next scene you're wearing the dress you made. I work in IT at an air traffic control organization. The TV show in question is Scorpion, Season 1, Episode 1. The procedure is, well, everything. To paint a picture, Scorpion is a show about a team of geniuses solving problems that others can't solve. In this particular episode, a software update in the control tower at LAX renders communication between tower and aircraft inoperable. This is a problem, because without communication, the pilots don't know when and where to land and will just keep circling in a holding pattern until they run out of fuel and crash. I don't remember the exact details of the episode, but I believe it continues with the team trying to obtain a backup of the old software to restore it. Unfortunately, the backup is stored in some off-site location that looks like a shady storage unit. And the clock is ticking, because the backup is automatically deleted after a certain amount of time. Needless to say, this first plan fails. But then comes the solution. Airplanes run the same software and they still have the old version. So if they can just download the software from an airplane, they can then upload it onto the systems in the control tower. So they manage to contact one of the airplanes circling the area by calling one of the passengers on a satellite phone. Since the airplane can't land, somehow, the only way to obtain the software is by downloading it from a flying plane, and this is achieved by putting the team in a sports car that's racing across the runway of a nearby airport while the airplane is doing a low pass over the runway directly above the car. They then open a hatch on the airplane and hook up their laptop to the plane with an Ethernet cable. Ultimately, they're able to complete the download before they run out of runway and the airplane has to take off again. There are so many things wrong in this episode that it's hard to see which things they got right. But here are some of the main points. Software updates are never rolled out without a fallback solution. Typically the old system being on active standby, or by doing a gradual rollout where not all equipment is updated at the same time. The exact procedure depends on the nature of the equipment and the update, but there's always a plan B. If a tower becomes unavailable for whatever reason, planes don't helplessly circle around until they crash. The tower only handles arrivals and departures, but all traffic beyond the immediate vicinity of the airport is handled by an Area Control Center, ACC. If a plane is in comms range of a tower, it'll also be able to communicate with the local ACC. So if the tower is unavailable at the destination airport, the pilot can hail the ACC controller, that they just spoke to in transit towards said airport, and ask for assistance. The planes can then be rerouted to nearby airports. Backups are not kept in shady storage units and don't expire within a day of being created. Planes don't run the same software that air traffic control uses. You can't simply take a backup from one and load it onto the other. Ignoring the previous point, why would they need to fetch a backup from an airborne plane rather than find some unaffected aircraft on the ground somewhere? I don't even want to think about the physics and timing implications of trying to hook up a flying plane to a laptop while driving underneath it in a car. The fact that the aforementioned stunt takes place on the runway of a nearby airport should be a major hint that, yes, the Los Angeles area does have more than one airport. Scorpion was an amazing show in the It's So Bad It's Good category, and that first episode still brings a smile to my face. Oh look, an ancient text in Aramaic. I'll just translate this immediately and make it rhyme and everything in English too. Reality, it looks like Aramaic maybe, but I'm not sure. Could be a similar dialect? This word means horse, I think, or maybe skin. There's a word here that just means to do, but there's no context. Honestly lads, this could be about anything. See also, spies who are meant to speak XX language like a native and who are barely comprehensible. If you yell at a witness in a courtroom, you will be thrown out. There are far more objections than ever shown in media, and also, judges ask a lot of questions. Paul Blart was a little too accurate. Nuclear waste disposal chemist, and The Simpsons, although a great show, has fucked us royally. The amount of people who think that nuclear waste is a green ooze that flows through rock, getting into the groundwater and mutating everything it touches is insane. In reality, in North America and most of Europe, nuclear waste is small black uranium pellets that look a bit like bigger rabbit food. Every time someone asks what happens if it spills during transport, the look on their face is as if we are crazy. When we say we get those grippers on poles and pick them up is priceless. Any portrayal of medical research inevitably shows some crusading doctor pulling strings to get someone into a trial, which always results in a 100% cure rate. That's not how any of this works. Also, labs never have the equivalent of mood lighting, and most lab reagents look like water, not like a rainbow puked all over the place. Reporters in TV shows always have unlimited time and resources to devote to one big story that would never be assigned, like working undercover at a store in December to write about Christmas shopping. In reality, a reporter is juggling a dozen stories and a dozen deadlines at once at all times. I design newspapers. Whomever does it for TV or movies is not a newspaper designer or editor. There are always weird rules, design-wise or editorially, that are broken. Every time. Number 1 most broken rule is double quotes in a headline. They should be single quotes. There should never be double quotes in a headline or subhead. Also, just one giant picture of a mugshot on the front page. That almost never happens. Unless that person is the most famous person in the world and they shot the other most famous person in the world. Maybe. Has nobody in Hollywood ever seen a newspaper? Shows love to show scientists pipetting, yet never bother getting it right, and it's not that hard. Here's a tip, no pun intended, there's not supposed to be bubbles. Looking at you, CSI. The way fire alarm systems and fire suppression sprinkler systems work. Pulling a fire alarm pull station will not set off the sprinklers in a building. Starting a fire under a single sprinkler head will not set off any head other than the one activated. Source: I install fire alarm systems for a living. Caveat: there are certain types of fire suppression systems which are designed to go off when a pull station is activated. They are generally used in rooms with extremely sensitive equipment, such as server rooms, file storage, etc. They use a dry powder or foam, rather than water, though. I'm a software developer. Every time there's coding in movies, they write code with ridiculous speeds and without the assistance of Google. and when they run the code, it has no errors and works perfectly. I wish it was like that. So much with aircraft. The commercial ones are not that maneuverable. Physics still applies when you're in the air. You can't just jump in any military jet and know how to fly it, or even start it up. Test flights of experimental aircraft are incredibly boring and entirely scripted, and not just some hotshot pilot in the seat yanking the stick around. Almost anything forensically related. No, you can't enhance crappy surveillance video. No, DNA tests don't take 30 minutes. No, DNA tests don't magically ding and display a name, home address, phone number, etc. I could go on and on. The effect of the way TV shows/movies affect everyone's perception of forensic science is staggering and can cause significant problems when courtroom testimony/evidence doesn't line up with the jury's perception of how it should work. Iron Man, making me think that I will be Tony Stark in a couple of years because I'm an engineer. He's a master electrician, programmer, electronics engineer, mechanical engineer, HVAC engineer, simulation expert, military technology expert, aerospace engineer, welding expert, and can basically do all of those tasks himself, without any other help. Elevators won't free fall if you snap a single cable. Also, you can't get out of the escape hatch in the ceiling of the cab, it's locked on the outside. Safety tip: if you do get trapped in an elevator, just sit still and use the elevator phone to call for help. Trying to escape or pry doors open can get you killed. There is no danger to you at all inside the elevator. Psychiatric hospitals showing patients just sitting and laughing hysterically or doing any sort of stereotypically crazy behavior. People with mental illness are usually fairly normal in behavior, they're just going through a tough time. I've worked in a psych ward for 2 years now, and have never, ever seen anyone act like that, apart from one patient who eventually admitted to faking psychosis. Also, the whole thing of immediately sedating/restraining patients who get upset is bullshit. Staff are trained to verbally de-escalate. Restraint is used when that fails. Seclusion is used when that fails. Chemical restraints, sedatives, are used if seclusion fails. I have never seen mechanical restraints used. Every time we do a physical restraint, there are tons of forms and procedures to follow, so it's never done as casually as it is in fiction. I hate anything science or medical based. All it takes is one glance at the monitors or computer screen to see they know nothing about science and just put stuff on there that looks sciencey or interesting. Plus when they throw in a bunch of medical sounding terms in random order that they just pulled off WebMD and all the characters nod in agreement like it's the most sensible thing they ever heard. Desperately want to explain some sci-fi technology. Quantum physics. At least Spectral had a fairly good representation of an optics/laser lab in one scene. Except the lab had windows, which is a big health and safety no-no. Anything beauty related, if an actress is doing her makeup, she is brushing her face randomly with a clean brush. If someone is being waxed, it's extremely painful and they don't get Vaseline nipples, looking at you 40 years old virgin, and aloe vera afterwards, which is cruel. I do commercial heating and air conditioning. When people crawl through pristine shiny ductwork, it's hilarious. Ductwork is typically lined in commercial buildings to stop it from sweating and let the sound and it filthy, dusty, and mold-ridden. A lot of my mates are in the army, and I know that the BBC brought out a show about the Royal Marines and all the scopes on their guns were the wrong way round. Hacking, or rather anything in IT. It's not about typing very fast. Not everything has big red buttons on it. Not every programmer is a misfit, awkward asshole genius. The reality is more boring though. It's work like any other, with annoying coworkers, clueless managers, and pointless meetings. The only show that does this well is Silicon Valley. And the fact that it's a comedy just shows how ridiculous the industry is. Oh, and Dilbert. Any house flipping show grossly misrepresents the ease of house flipping and the numbers. It's been a while since I've seen the current product, but in the past it was quite common for those shows to completely ignore holding costs like property taxes, insurance, lawn care, utilities, etc. These are costs that accrue while your house is being rehabbed and while it is being listed on the market. Those costs should be factored in when calculating the profit of your flip. It isn't simply sale price, purchase price plus rehab costs equals profit. You have to factor in holding costs and any other transactional costs that occur at the sale. As a result, you have so many clueless people who are trying to flip houses because they think it is so easy on TV. 1 in about 20 lock-picking scenes in movies get it right. All the others are completely stupid and could be avoided with a 5-minute Google search. To lockpick you use a pick and attention bar, not 2 picks and definitely not 1 pick alone. I call your X and raise you Y is not a valid bet. As soon as you say the words I call you have called, that is it, you don't get to add anything to it. This is to prevent people fishing for extra information by seeing what the person's reaction is to the first part before adding the second. The worst part is that it is such a well-known trope that I can almost guarantee that I'll have to explain this at least once every time a new player comes into a game I'm hosting. Edit. A few people have asked about the phrasing I see your X and raise you Y as was often seen in older westerns. It's the same thing, see and call mean the same thing, but it's less about the exact wording and more about the intent. The first thing you declare that you are doing is what you are doing, no matter what word or action you use to declare it. CPR. Anything medical, but definitely CPR. Actual, proper, effective CPR is hard fucking work. You need to compress the chest 1/3-1/2 of the way, 120 BPM, straight elbows, using your body weight as force behind your arms. It takes so much out of you that you need to rotate compressors every 2 minutes in order for it to be effective. The patient rarely comes back, even with advanced support in the way of drugs, defibrillation, etc., and definitely isn't conscious, coherent, and walking around immediately after CPR. Many rearrest because CPR only buys you time to fix the problem that killed your patient. It doesn't put lost blood back in the system, it doesn't fix multi-organ failure, it only buys time. And at a very expensive price. Most shows have namby-pamby vague pats on the chest, far too slow, with the compressor stopping every 2 seconds to sob at the dead person until the force of their emotion causes them to miraculously be healed of the injury or illness that caused them to die. Then they immediately stagger upright, never rearrest, and are usually able to proceed in a relatively useful capacity. Ha! A lot of other medical stuff is extremely poorly researched, or outright wrong. People using stethoscopes without the earpieces in their ears, the wrong end of an 4-line tape to the patient, people walking off incapacitating wounds, but CPR bugs me most of all. Proper radio etiquette: at the end of your transmission, saying over means the conversation is live and you expect a response. Saying out means the transmission is ended and your station is out, i.e. conversation over. There is no fucking over and out. Except Mr. Robot, every hacking scene is very stupidly represented. No one can just hack into the NASA or FBI by clicking 3 buttons and typing rapidly on black screen with green text. Professional nanny. In most movies I see nannies are either some down on their luck failed artist or college student that gets hired by multi-millionaires for 20 hours per week. Or B, a 10/10 22-year-old that seduces the husband. As a result, no one understands how my job works. In order to work for a wealthy family, you need excellent references and years of experience. You work a lot, sometimes as part of a team. Being a high-end nanny generally pays very well. Also, the whole femme fatale trope is so obnoxious. You spend all day with children, getting covered in spit up and paint and baby food. It's not sexy at all. Well, most TV shows fail to even show nurses, so basically there is no representation. I'm not even sure I ever saw a nurse on Grey's Anatomy, and doctors seem to do just about everything, or they're sleeping with nurses in call rooms. When people are using sign language, it seems to be correct, but it's hard to tell because it's never completely in frame. Oddly enough, Family Guy does an exceptional job. Not a procedure. But after being in the military, it essentially can irk the living hell out of me watching military movies. There is always, and I mean always, a shit of the main character walking in broad daylight and a tank rolls by and a group of soldiers are running in a PT formation, others are marching. Some dude has his headgear off walking and smoking a cigar. I'm in IT. Everything. But here are the 2 biggest. Destroying data by shooting/blowing up a server. Because the storage probably isn't in the same box as the processor, but even if you blow up the whole room, anything important will have frequently updated off-site backups. And no, downloading a copy to a USB stick, like anything really interesting would even fit, does not delete the original, never mind the backups. Controlling everything and anything. First, it has to have a chip in it, that is somehow connected to whatever you're using to hack it. Second, no matter how good a hacker you are, you can't make something do something it is incapable of doing. And even if the incapable part is just coding you could theoretically alter, that's not happening in a few seconds. You're going to spend a long time figuring it out. Working with manuscripts. We do not wear gloves. There are rare exceptions if there is a hazardous mold on the manuscript, otherwise, you just need clean hands. And the fact Bruce Banner has 7 PhDs. 2 is a lot, but no advisor or funding body would permit him to do more. He would be in university forever. In the US, PhD programs are between 5 to 7 years. Let's say, for fun, he does them in 4 because he is stupid smart. That's 28 years. Maybe they assume that he is doing them on very closely related topics, then just do postdoctoral work. I study pathological personality and how it affects health. In crime dramas, particularly ones that revolve around criminal profiling, you'll often hear lines like the suspect is a sociopath with probable antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic and psychopathic tendencies. Although there may be slight variations in those things, except sociopath and antisocial personality disorder, which are exactly the same, it's basically all the same thing. My cousin is a certified ethical hacker, and whenever I want to trigger him I showed him this. His face turns red so fast you would believe he got food poisoning. Anything with normal hotels. No, we don't just ask for your name and give you a key. No, we don't like it when you throw a party in the middle of the night and you will get kicked out if you don't shut it down. Yes, there are charges for damages to the room. A chef here, and most reality shows that give a contestant 30 minutes to create a dish. Not only do customers not realize that those are stop-start shows and an episode is filmed over 8 to 12 hours and edited heavily, the reality is that in an actual commercial kitchen we have to work up menus. We spend hours before service getting things ready for that menu which is in current use, and when you order a meal it is cooked in the order it comes in. If you try to order something you seen on TV last night that Gordon Ramsay slapped up in 15 minutes, it isn't going to happen at your local eatery. Or the fact that your cafe isn't McDonald's. We can't make a chicken Caesar wrap in 2 minutes just because you have a bus to catch. Karen. Bartender. We don't put umbrellas in drinks anymore. We haven't done that since 1985. Programming consists mostly of research and thinking, not typing frantically on a keyboard. Every scene where a teacher says, "Now let's talk about George Washington," and then the bell rings and the teacher calls to the students' backs, "Write a 2-page essay about the American Revolution by tomorrow." A. What did you do for the first 44.5 minutes of class that you're only starting the lesson as the bell rings? B. I guarantee you not a single student is completing an assignment you shout at them on the way out the door. Every takeaway coffee cup held or drank in a show or movie appears empty. There seems to be no weight to the cup, so it just looks unnatural the way it's held and drank from. I'm a mechanic. Every show or movie we are represented like either idiots or people that can magically sort anything in the space of 12 hours. We are neither. For example, I'm a fairly clever guy. I program small stuff in my spare time, have a keen interest in astronomy, not astrology, build PCs and repair electronics. I also play guitar. The other side of being able to fix stuff fast is utter crap and all. I know a job where one diesel injector on a well-known manufacturer is a 27-hour book time. Also, on a side note, I do not plug a computer in and it magically tells me the fault. That happens on very, very rare occasions. As a captain, almost anything to do with boats. It is difficult to watch anything and not have it spoiled by boat scenes that are clearly put together by people who know nothing about boats. Worst example, that Robert Redford movie. I couldn't finish the movie, it was so bad. How most designers, especially graphic and textile, are portrayed as these glamorous, fashionable individuals who look like not a single hair on their heads is out of place, when in reality they're usually the ones who look most exhausted and ready to die after 10+ revisions with the client and 2 hours of looking for the one font that fits their description of minimalistic that pops out.